Let me start this video off with this caveat. It's not my intention to be repetitive, but when I find stories like this that are just so on point, it's impossible. It's impossible for me to just ignore them. Uh, it just is. So this guy basically lays out things that I've been saying in a very concise, organized manner. He's talking about how the coronavirus, the wildfires, the political environment that we're operating in, it's all connected. It's all connected. This is not. It's impossible to look at one of these things by themselves. It's impossible. Let me see. It's impossible to look at it by itself. This guy talks about collapse. He talks about what seems right, fire, flood, plague, drought, famine, poverty, despair, and all illusions are warning to us. Accelerating pulsation of disaster. California is burning again. The world will develop fire belts, of which California and Australia are becoming a part. Heat belts. The highest temperature on Earth was just recorded. That's right, 130 in Death Valley. I think that was a couple weeks ago. Flood belts. While the pandemic raged much of Asia, flood. I didn't even know that. The West didn't take much notice, except though China's largest dam is not its limits. Mega floods they experience, just like wild mega fires. They're getting worse on seasonal, yearly cycles. In a decade or two, these floods will also threaten habitats. COVID is not an anomaly. It's part of a trend. SARS bad, MERS worse, COVID world changing. Most virologists were expecting a respiratory coronavirus pandemic precisely because the thing's been on the cards for the last 2 or 3 decades now. The respiratory coronavirus has gotten more widespread, become wider spreading pandemics faster. He makes the point that a decade or so from now, we'll probably be hit by another pandemic. Will it be worse than this one? If reading history's an indication, yes. I'm gonna tell you something. I've showed y'all my masks. I've showed you my full face mask and all that. I'm thinking like I might need to get some more stuff. Like it's a long-term goal, but I need to, because I agree with that. You know, and I don't have. It's just really a gas mask. It's just a respirator with the KN95 pads. But I have really thought about maybe getting a little more in depth, getting a Tyvek suit possibly, things of that nature. I've thought about it, but that's more of a long-term thing, because I'll just say for me, guys, I will always be a prepper. I will never again let my father or anybody else talk me into being a victim. Because that's what my dad is a victim. When me and him would talk and he's like, you want a pandemic to happen. I realized like that's victim talk. That's the talk of a person who has no connection, no control over their society. And they think that being a man is about like wearing a Rolex and driving a big car and going to the club and like feeding into this world. Even though, you know, my dad's very intelligent. He knows how fucked up society is. He knows about the CIA, assassinations, all this stuff. But his idea is to feed into a crumbling society, which to me is defeatist. But, you know, it's kind of, let me add to it, having kids are a part of that. You know, like my stepmom was like, he wants to take his kids to church and then walk down the aisle and like he's showing off his kids. So having a bunch of kids, having a big car, getting a yacht that you can't afford. Like, this is my father's, this is his mindset, this is his idea. And to me, like, even if he still had the money, which he doesn't, it's still really dumb because society's crumbling around us. It's all around us. Moving on. And he's of the age, even like before we were like, man, this stuff is really dangerous for elderly people. Now we know younger folks getting it. So, recently, evidence was found of methane deposits under the permafrost breaching. That's really, really bad news. It's one of the most potent greenhouse gas there is, and there are massive deposits buried in the ice. Start to burst. Think sudden, severe, probable mass extinction scale climate change. Then a complete rupture of life as we know it over the course of a few decades. Acceleration, pulsation of disaster. As these cycles of catastrophe operating at regular scales get worse and worse, the system will begin to buckle and then break faster and harder than we think. California, look, wildfire is bad, pandemic is worse, but like fires during a respiratory pandemic, what now? COVID's ripping the economy apart, causing a massive wave of unemployment, failing incomes, business closures. Vicious cycle of depression is already igniting. To fight accelerating waves of natural calamity, fire, flood, drought, famine, we sap resources that need to invest in tomorrow. Simply fending off catastrophe will take a longer and larger share of our resources. That leads us over to invest in the things that really improve people's quality of life, healthcare, education, retirement, and so on. What happens as a result of that? People's qualities of life fall. Repression and frustration and unhappiness grow. And the predictable consequence of that is more extremism. Discontented masses tend to turn to demagogues, which blame outsiders' problems on hated minorities. That age of catastrophe will be a boon to tomorrow's Trumps. Talks about the mid-2030s. Limits of our civilization's fundamental systems have been breached. Insurance and banking system will be able to cover the loss of burning states and flooded cities. They'll go bankrupt and probably demand huge bailouts. Make us should have a devastating consequence. Small businesses will close. Unemployed folks don't pay taxes. Short-term solutions. All this will produce a massive swing towards demagogues. Going back to that, 30s and 40s, we're back to 2010s, the decades the world's turned to a new wave of neo-authoritarians from Trump to Nigel Farage, to Modi, to Duterte, to much, much worse. The hard right wave of the 2010s was a reaction to failing neoliberalism, but the fast wave of the 2030s be a reaction to a failing civilization. I don't know about that. Look, I hadn't read all this when I first wanted to do the video, but I read it. I don't know about that. Where I work, no one wears masks. Either one of the HD shops, no one wears masks. There's other shops, nobody wears masks there. They got signs on the door, no one wears masks. Then my friend Denzel was saying the same thing in Missouri, no one wears masks. The governor jokes about it, I think that wearing masks is kind of considered to be like an egalitarian thing. Like, the idea for me, people wearing little masks on their face, is that I may have it. I don't want you to get sick with it, so I'll wear a mask. I'll get close to you. I'll keep social distancing. And I think that the South, like, I work with savages. I work with cave people. And there's like a joy in hurting people. There's like a joy in being contrary to facts. And there's a joy in supporting or voting for anything that is not egalitarian. Like it's a strike against egalitarianism. Like they're not fighting for a better world. They're fighting for a more divided world, a more conflicted world. And like a lot of what they believe is just wrong. They like they think it's funny to be wrong, and like this guy was talking about Germany, I guess, and he was like climate change, and he was like, that's why they got the most gay men living in Germany. Like, why does that matter? Like, you look at a country and that's all you see is the amount of homosexuals. Like, what goes on? That's the mindset. That's it. You know, it's I believe that it's just this laughing at egalitarianism, laughing at making the world a better place, and then like, well, I'll wash my hands. What the hell is washing your hands due to coronavirus? You know what I mean? Like, do you really know that it doesn't do it, or is that like a joke? Like, well, I'll just wash my hands. I'll just, wearing a mask. I'll look. That's why I think no one wears masks. And it's also the laziness of it. There's an outlaw culture in the South. There really is, like with the police and everything. There's a culture of you can't make me do anything. You can't make me do anything. Even if what I do hurts other people, you can't make me do this. You know what I mean? You can't. And that's black people. That's everybody down there. And I just thought with a pandemic that people would put no. I was wrong. Nope. That's the culture. That's the culture here. And so, like I mentioned on Cedar Post, I'm laughing, getting mad at the governor, Roy Cooper, for saying, hey, I have the RNC in charge, you have to wear masks. And they didn't want to do it. All the cops on there were like, oh, I'm not voting Democrat this year. And what happened? The RNC had to come back to Charlotte. They didn't follow the rules, but they had to bow down. None of those cops say anything about that. None of those cops were like, well, he did hold his ground. He held his ground. Like I said, like if I do want to get in my car, Denzel want to get my house and say, hey man, finish your beer before you get in my car. Or finish your blunt before you get in my, I don't want you getting in my car with a container or nothing. I held my ground. Say what you want about me, but you had to do what I said, so I held my ground. I just realized with rednecks, there's a joy in hurting people. There's a joy in harming your neighbor. There's a joy in conflict with them. Like there's a real joy, and they think that that's being masculine. Whereas to me, they're making the world a much colder place, and they're justifying aggressive law enforcement. They're justifying a police state. They are. Because they won't do common sense. They won't do the things that they should do. So guess what? Someone with a gun has to tell them what to do. There's cave people down there, man. There's cave people. But I think that if climate change gets really bad, pandemics get really bad, I think that just makes the world turn further away from America. Like, to me, coronavirus was a big wake-up call for much of the world. And America is in this nationalist, fascist, racist era right now, whatever. And the rest of the world is like, dude, we need you to be on, to come to our aid. And America's like, no, we're going to war with China. We're going to do what are you doing? That's where America's at right now. One thing they say on here about how there won't be that they won't be able to invest. I say this all the time. The future has been canceled. Trump is the canceling of the future. There is no future. We're just gonna run up the past of the boomers so they can die living the same life they've been living, and nothing will change, and nothing will get better for anybody, and they'll just be like, oh, well, so what? As our world turns to hell. Like that, to me, I see America turning into neo-authoritarianism, but to anybody else with a working brain cell in their head, they already knew this. They can see climate change is getting worse. And America, with this nationalist, fascist era we're in, is like, they're in denial. They don't believe in climate change. They got a president don't believe in climate change. And so the worse it gets, the worse they cling to hard right leaders. I'll give you that. But I don't see much of the rest of the world doing that. This represents the end of the American empire. It does. This does not necessarily represent the rest of the West. This does not necessarily represent the end of the world. This represents America losing power. And also the rest of the world looking at America like a person who's demented. Like you are sort of demented. That you are so deeply hateful and so deeply rageful that you just say, well, I don't believe in science. I don't believe in climate change. I don't believe in pandemics. Like, look, America's been quarantined from the rest of the world for the most part, especially from Europe. But I've got to say, like, even after this pandemic is over with, I think the rest of the world is going to be like, you guys did elect Donald Trump. And you guys are walking around without masks. You guys are doing this stuff that's obviously stupid and asinine. And I think, like, this represents a cooling as far as the Atlantic allies, and that's a positive. Because to me, America has to fall. I think I said it before, that you can't be a patriot under Trump and be a conscientious world citizen. You can't do it. What we're talking about here is world citizen stuff. When I talk about America. So, the fact that things have gotten so extreme in America, it represents people wanting to go down with the ship and wanting to go down with the world of the 80s, the world of the 70s, the world of, we're not going to have any protections on clean water. We're not going to have low-flow toilets. We're not going to have energy-efficient appliances. We're not going to have energy-efficient shower heads. These are small examples, but that's what America is. Like, we're going to go back to the world before you had environmental protections. And the rest of the world is like, what? You know what I mean? Like the RNC not having any policy proves, because I said this before, it proves that point. It proves that point that right now, Republican Party is not about policy. It's about maintaining a status of living for the rich. And it's about a return to our earlier time. And I've said it before, that earlier time, we were ignorant of climate change. We were ignorant of these things. We were ignorant of water. We were ignorant about the ice caps melting. We were ignorant about many of these things. We weren't aware of the sheer risk of these things. Maybe that. The sheer danger. Like, I know you don't touch fire, but you may not know, like, it's going to cause 30-degree burns and nerve damage and this and that, and you'll be in a burn center for 6 months. You don't know that. You just know that it's that. Maybe that's what, that's how it was back then. That, well, there's some problems, but, like showing you the cute polar bears and stuff in the 90s. All that crap. I don't think America can be fixed. I wish America could be snapped off from the rest of the world. I think that America can't be fixed, can't be saved. My hope is, and was before Trump got elected, would be that he would defund NATO, he would destabilize the Atlantic allies, destabilize NATO, and here's a bonus, actually make the rest of the world not trust America. Actually make the allies not trust America. To me, all that's a positive. Because America can't, two things, America can't do the things they do without allies, whether they believe it or not. At the UN, which we're seeing them being laughed at the UN, and also the fact, also, I'll just say that America's in a really tumultuous spot, and the rest of the world sees it. How fragmented we are, you know, how hateful many of these people in America are, and how vengeful they are for what they see to be the Obama era, you know, not doing things for American citizens. All right. So, but what I'm going is people will get ugly. You know, the Mexicans, Latinos, and Muslims, no limit the damage they'll do. 23rd, there won't be one. I don't really believe that. Also, I see the rest of the world turning against America more and more. To me, that's God. Because if Trump was smart, he would have stopped this a long time ago. This making the rest of the world, you know, have contention with America doing crazy shit. They would have stopped that. We need our allies. Instead, Pence has openly made threats to the World Court. International Criminal Court has been threatened by this administration. We have pulled out of the World Health Organization. We have done that. You know, these are all signs of a country that is eliminated even the pretense of collaboration with the world, collaboration with other world leaders for a better world. I think that if this stuff he's talking about, or even half of it happens, I don't think you'll have people, you know, mad like this. I think people will be mad at the right. I think it hurts the right. Like, I think climate change, young people realize it more than the older folks do. You know, I think that there's I think, just like I say this often with right-wingers, that right-wingers act in bad faith, like making fun of Kaepernick's name and what I told you about Ray Cooper, the governor, holding his ground against the RNC. That Republicans, they say things, but they're really acting in bad faith. You know, like some cop had done something, he had lied and got fired, and people were like, what about Jussie Smollett? Jussie Smollett's not a police officer. He's a private citizen that did something really fucking stupid. It's nowhere near the same thing as a cop lying and saying someone assaulted him when he was not assaulted. Not the same thing. A lot of the climate change stuff, I think, is acting in bad faith too. What I mean by bad faith is lying, like openly lying, twisting up the discourse, twisting up the discussion, making one thing mean another. What Trump does, where he's talking about water restrictions and how the toilet won't flush, and he talks about what else? Water restrictions, toilet won't flush, dishwashers. Like, that's his policy. That's his policy. That's his whole policy. Like, this is literally right wing acting in bad faith. It's distraction. Distraction is what it is. None of that is about science. None of that's even conflicting with science. It's just making up white aggrievement. White aggrievement. That's white aggrievement. That I can't have the world I used to have. And so because of that, as a white man, I'm being cheated. I'm being cheated. This is my world. I'm supposed to be able to smoke cigars longer than longer than Cincinnati. I'm supposed to eat a big sloppy Philly cheesesteak. That's it. I'm supposed to be able to just walk around buck naked if I want to, and drive a big truck that's got smoke coming off it. Like, this is it. This is it. Like, that's all they're fighting for. That is the American way of life. That's it. And I just think that if climate change gets worse, it'll be harder for them to do that, for them to say that. I think that what the Republican Party is doing is going out on a limb. And I say this often, my hope with Trump, my hope after Trump, is the Republican Party is so considered to be so radical, it's no longer relevant to the working class. You're gonna always have these white guys out here that are racist. You're gonna always have these white guys out here that are homophobic, and you know what I mean, basically socialism is the same thing as capitalism. Socialism is the same thing as communism. That if you're for gay marriage, then that means you're for pedophilia. That think defund the police, same thing as abolish. Like you're gonna always have those kind of people. You're gonna always have that type of stuff. You know, I don't care about that anymore. You know. Imagine how good people got now when all was under threat with their middle class aspirations, living better lives than their grandparents, and how violent and brutal they get when the world is turning to ashes and dust around them. Much, much worse than most of us think. 20s, 30s, and late 2030s will be a horrific time where the worst of human brutality is on display, where terms like climate genocide and mass crimes against humanity become familiar again. How bad things are going to get, much, much worse than you think. They're going to be absolutely apocalyptic. I don't mean to scare you, I said to raise a point. I don't think so. I think that we've been talking about climate change for a very long time, and I think that for rednecks now, they're not attempting to defend climate change denial anymore. I think it's like all like putting out opposition information about Dr. Fauci, saying he's wrong about this. You know how many diseases they've been wrong about in the beginning? That's very common. They're not gods. That's very, very common when you're first studying a disease that's mutate and get some stuff. So that was opposition information. I think that much of what you see with COVID is just people who don't care. I go to work sites and people have coughed in my direction, or if you're on the road, I'd walk in a truck stop with a mask on. People start coughing and, not coughing at me, but I don't see that as a politics. I just see that as a cruelty. I see that as a joy in cruelty. I see that as a denial of anything egalitarian, a denial of anything, like I said, that my concern for other people makes me weak. I'm weak because I'm concerned about other people around me. I'm weak because I'm concerned about how my actions affect others. And that's what that is. I'm not bothered by that stuff. It's immaturity, really. I mean, I don't know how bad this thing will get, but I don't necessarily agree that you're going to have crimes against humanity. I don't necessarily see that. Anyway, peace.